When we think of cyber war, we might think of a digital 9/11, a large-scale cyber attack on a country or a set of countries, enabled perhaps through sleeper code that had been hidden in the code base of the target nation's critical industries and defense systems, lying in wait until activated by the attacker. We might imagine resulting financial chaos, widespread power outages, communications disruption, the collapse of air traffic control systems, and all other forms of mayhem ensuing, perhaps in conjunction with a conventional military assault. While that scenario might make for a promising movie script, it probably doesn't tell us much about what a real cyber war would look like. We don't really know yet what a large-scale conflict in cyberspace would entail, since the first one hasn't happened yet, but we can get some clues by considering examples of cyber conflicts that have involved nation-states. In 2007, attacks against government, newspaper, and banking websites in Estonia are believed to have been in retaliation for that nation's decision to relocate a Soviet World War II memorial from its central location in the nation's capital. Suspicion for the attacks naturally fell on Russia, although whether the attacks were sponsored by the Russian government or merely an act of patriotism on the part of private citizens is unclear. 1 year later, Russia was again implicated in a cyber conflict, this time with Georgia over a disputed border area. As in the Estonian attacks, the cyber attacks on Georgia mainly consisted of massive DDoS attacks and website defacements. In this case, however, the cyber attacks occurred in conjunction with conventional military conflict. While it's believed that many of the attacks were conducted by Russian civilians, including elements of organized crime, such as the Russian business network, the timing of the cyber attacks just prior to the Russian invasion suggests involvement by the Russian military. The cyber attacks themselves are considered to have been very effective, targeting government websites and limiting the Georgian government's ability to communicate with its citizens and the outside world. The cyber attacks against Estonia and Georgia may stretch the notion of warfare, since no physical damage was accomplished as part of the attack. In neither case did operations in the cyber domain have the equivalent effect of a conventional military action, such as dropping a bomb. In 2007, a United States Department of Homeland Security experiment called Aurora demonstrated that a cyber attack can have a physically destructive effect. In this demonstration, a cyber attack successfully compromised a power plant control system, reportedly destroying a power generator, which literally went up in smoke as a result of the attack. The Aurora experiment demonstrated physical destruction in a controlled lab setting. Physical destruction in the wild was demonstrated only 3 years later with the discovery of the highly sophisticated worm Stuxnet in 2010, which targeted centrifuges in an Iranian uranium enrichment plant. Stuxnet targeted industrial controllers of the type typically attached to SCADA systems, supervisory control and data acquisition, in order to take control of the underlying industrial process. Only certain models of controllers manufactured by Siemens attached to certain frequency converter models were targeted by Stuxnet, indicating the highly selective nature of the attack. Once a vulnerable controller was discovered, Stuxnet hijacked it by loading its own rogue code, which executed in a stealth manner alongside the legitimate code. Without any external command and control, the rogue code would then take control without detection, altering the industrial process, while at the same time feeding pre-recorded input back to the legitimate controller during the attack to give the false impression that operations were normal. Only frequency converter modules operating in a specific speed range were targeted. The attack consisted of altering the speed for short intervals over periods of months. In the case of Iranian centrifuges, which are believed to be Stuxnet's targets, this speed manipulation is believed to have worn down and ultimately destroyed as many as 1,000 centrifuges at Iran's Natanz uranium enrichment plant, as well as rendering uranium produced at this facility to be unusable. It is widely believed that Stuxnet set Iran's nuclear program back several years. The high degree of sophistication of Stuxnet, including its use of an unprecedented 4 zero-day exploits, and the significant knowledge of industrial processes required for its design, has led many to conclude nation-state authorship, with a joint effort between the United States and Israel being a common theory. Citing unnamed sources, an investigative reporter for the New York Times claimed to have confirmed this theory, additionally claiming that Stuxnet was tested in Israel using centrifuges of the type damaged in Iran. We have considered several examples of cyber conflict associated with nation-states, giving us hints as to what a future cyber conflict might entail. We can draw several observations. First, the challenge of attack attribution makes it difficult or impossible to know who to blame for a given attack. In future conflicts where we won't have the luxury of conducting time-consuming forensic investigations, it is likely that mistaken attribution will be common, and any retaliation taken against wrong targets is only likely to escalate the conflict. Also, we can expect more cyber attacks with kinetic effects like Stuxnet for two reasons. First, and perhaps most importantly, Stuxnet showed it can be done, and that was probably enough to inspire many organizations to start work in developing similar weapons. Secondly, given that a highly sophisticated cyber weapon like Stuxnet was used during a time of relative peace, one can't help but wonder what other cyber weapons are sitting on the shelf right now, perhaps considered too valuable to use, unless things really heat up. Finally, regarding future cyber war, we can expect civilians may play a central role in future conflicts, in conducting DDoS attacks, defacements, and other forms of routine attacks. Indeed, your home computer may be a combatant in the next cyber war, even if you yourself do not join the fight, because it may be compromised by an adversary and used as a resource in the conflict without your knowledge or consent.